The member for Maranoa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to make a contribution on this carbon tax legislation, a bundle of bills that I've got to say that when the government introduced these 18 bills last week, with 2 to 3 weeks for the Parliament to consider it, it really is a disgrace, and I must also say that that the effect this carbon tax will have across this nation from all corners of the nation will be dramatic. There's no one will escape the effect of these 18 bills of pieces of legislation if they pass this House and the upper house. And I say that if they pass this House, they can only pass the lower house with the support of the 6 independent members who sit on the crossbenches. Deputy Speaker, the introduction of these bills represents also a very significant breach of trust of the Australian people, because these bills will forever change our nation, yet the people of Australia have been denied an opportunity, which is their fundamental right, I believe, in a democracy, to have their say. Because when this Prime Minister went to the people at the last election, it was a contest of ideas and minds, and the voters of Australia value their vote, and they made their decision based on what either side of this Parliament had to say in the lead-up to that election. And, of course, the Prime Minister said quite clearly that there will be no carbon tax under a government that she leads. That statement, I think, meant that the government today was elected on the basis that there would be no carbon tax under a government that was led by Julie Gillard. And since that time, of course, since the announcement by this Prime Minister, my office has been absolutely inundated with people concerned about the effect that this will have on their business, their farming operation or their families, wherever they live. Deputy Speaker, let me give you a bit of an overview in the House, a bit of an overview of the constituency that I represent, the seat of Maranoa. Represents over 42% of the landmass of Queensland, makes up the electorate of Maranoa. And it's one of the powerhouses of this nation, certainly a powerhouse in Queensland, and one of the electorates with resource-rich, and of course the expansion of the resource sector in my electorate is well documented, and of course it's happening as I speak in this House here today. The growth of the resource sector, the coal seam methane gas, the coal developments, and the associated industries that go with that, small businesses. It means that there are growth opportunities, job opportunities, small business opportunities as a result of the expansion of the resource sector. But of course our traditional base, since our early pioneers, established farming and pastoral interests out in Maranoa, are the base and will always be a base of the electorate of Maranoa. You know, whether it's cotton or beef or grain, olives, fruit, wool, vegetables, stone fruit, you name it. It's also a food bowl as well as an energy hub now, and a growing energy hub in Queensland. Deputy Speaker, of course, one of the things about Maranoa is it does have an impact when it comes to the cost of transport wherever you look. The tyranny of distance is a factor in everyone's day-to-day life. The electorate is a regional and rural electorate, that's no secret. And it is no secret also that regional Australia will be one of the hardest hit by this carbon tax. The tyranny of distance, whether it's businesses have to send their product to market, or whether they've got to bring in goods to farms or small businesses, requires transport, and the transport sector is going to be hit by this carbon tax. Access Economics, for interest, Deputy Speaker, has found that a $26 a tonne price on carbon will cost more than 126,000 jobs. I mean, how can anyone in this place support legislation that Access Economics say will cost Australians their job? 126,000 of them. And they'll be jobs in regional Australia. That's what their work shows. Deloitte's also predict that there will be a loss of 21,000 jobs, with a separate Queensland Treasury modelling predicting 12,000 jobs will be lost in Queensland. Now, how the Premier of Queensland, who was the federal president of the Labor Party, can support a carbon tax as she leads to the next state election and say, well, I'm supporting a carbon tax and I know it's going to cost Queenslanders 12,000 on their own Treasury modelling, it's going to cost them their job, is beyond me. Deputy Speaker, one of the other aspects and industries in my electorate is the electricity generation. I've got 3 coal-fired power stations, Tarong, Millmerran and Kogan Creek. Large power stations, baseload power stations. I've got a number of gas-fired power stations, and we are now soon going to see a very large solar thermal power station established just near Chinchilla. And those power stations and the workers there who work in those industries, and also working in the coal industry in the electorate and in the gas industry, are worried. But they went to the last election thinking, well, if we vote for the government, vote for Labor, there won't be a carbon tax under a government led by the now Prime Minister. But as I travel the electorate, and I travel it from east to west, north to south, people are not only worried about the future for their family or their business, they're now becoming angry at this government. And what they want is an election. The numbers of calls that I have to my office or the people I see in the street, they say, how can we have an election? Because we want a say on this. We want to have our say on whether we should have a carbon tax and this bundle of bills. They want their say. That's their democratic right. They value their vote. I believe we live in a democracy. And today, under the electoral cycle and the information provided by the people and the parties and anyone wanting to represent a constituency, people do read today. They're well informed and they are worried about this legislation and what it will mean to their family and their job, particularly their jobs. Can I just read for the benefit of the House what one of my constituents from Crow's Nest emailed me recently. His name is Paul from Crow's Nest, in the very east of the electorate, very near the Tarong power station. I don't know where he works, but it's an email from Paul, and I quote, "When it comes to the carbon tax fiasco, I used to be, and I say used to be, a Labor supporter. But now with the recent events over the past 12 months, I can no longer support the Labor movement. I'm totally disgusted with the push for a carbon tax that will hurt my family, who is already struggling to pay the bills, the mortgage, and put food on the table. I've been told by my employer that if this tax goes through, that I will lose my job along with others because they will no longer be able to afford to pay the tax and keep the current workforce." Now that's a person who's emailed my office and said he's a Labor supporter, and I respect people like that. But he is concerned. He's concerned for his family. He's concerned as how he's going to pay his mortgage. And what is so precious in every family is that family home, being able to own their own bit of Australia. That's their family home and their backyard. It's very precious to them. He's concerned. So concerned that as a supporter of the other side of the House in the past, he's prepared to email my office and tell me his story and his concern. A resident of Stanthorpe also, and I quote, Ian from Stanthorpe, he said, "As a resident of Stanthorpe and an Australian taxpayer, I urge you to strongly come out and force Julie Gillard to not bring in this new tax. We, like many other families, are struggling to survive, as it is without any further rise in the cost of living. Every time we turn around, power, fuel, food are going up. All this government can think of is how to waste our tax dollars." Once again, another family I could talk about small businesses in a minute, but just another family concerned about their future, concerned about how they're going to pay the bills and put food on the table and pay the mortgage. Among some of the most vocal opponents against the carbon tax in the Maranoa have been small business owners. I've received this letter from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Queensland. And I quote, "A carbon tax will flow through the economy, affecting the price of all goods and services and increasing the cost for all businesses, including those without a direct carbon price liability. Trade exposed and small and medium-sized businesses have limited ability to pass these costs on to customers and are at even greater risk of business competitiveness and viability. Given the importance of coal mining and minerals and the processing in this state, Queensland businesses face an even greater impact from the introduction of a carbon price. These industries are key employers in regional and rural Australia and in Queensland, directly and indirectly supporting a large number of locals and medium-sized businesses." Now, this letter is on behalf of many chambers of commerce in my own electorate. The Chamber of Commerce Queensland, the Border Rivers Chamber of Commerce based in Gundawindi, the Commerce Roma, my own hometown, Charleville District Chamber of Commerce in Western Queensland in a pastoral zone, the Inglewood Chamber of Commerce, South West Queensland Chamber of Commerce, the St Georgian District Chamber of Commerce, the Stanthorpe Chamber of Commerce and the Wandoan District Chamber of Commerce are listed as signatories from my electorate to that letter. Transport businesses in my electorate have written to me, and I want to quote from Ross Fraser. I'll praise you what Ross said rather than quote him. Ross Fraser is one of the partners in Fraser's Livestock Transport. They're based in Warwick, but they have other offices and transport centres in Roma, Longreach and also Cloncurry. They mainly move livestock. And what Ross Fraser said to me, he said, if this tax was $40 a tonne, and although I know this is a $23 a tonne tax bill that's presented to us, we know it will rise under this government. They know how to put up taxes and spend, but they don't know how to save and manage the economy. But what he said, it will cost their business $600,000 a year. $600,000 a year. Not only will it cost his business $600,000 a year, he's got to pass it on to his customers, and they will pay the bill. And that's why this tax is such a retrograde tax, because it cascades at each point. It has an impact through the economy. Now, Ross went on to say that they employ 110 people and their wages bill is $150,000 a week. Incredible. Now, this is a small business in a regional town in my electorate. So concerned are they about their future, they said, well, we've either got to pass it on if the industries can afford it, or they've got to absorb it or cut back on their operation. Warwick is also home to the Big W distribution point, and where Wickham's, another transport company, put 100 trucks a day on the road distributing supermarket goods across Queensland, across New South Wales, across into Victoria. Deputy Speaker, I could repeat the similar story in relation to Crisp coaches in Warwick. Russell Crisp told the Warwick Daily News, a local paper, he said that he believed the tax would have a negative impact on his customers. Now, Crisp coaches in Warwick, they are a bus company that are not subsidised by a local authority in a capital city. They've got to operate, whether there's one passenger on board or 50 on board. They run a magnificent service in Warwick, and of course I often see them down here. They brought children down to Parliament House, to schools down to Parliament House. But he said it will impact on their business because of the cost of fuel. But what he wants to know, is so many of my small businesses want to know, are they one of the big polluters that this government's talking about? We don't know. We can't find out who they are. Who are the big polluters? We on this side think those that are considered big polluters by the government, we believe they're great big job creators in this economy. So, Deputy Speaker, there's a whole lot more I'd like to say about Kyoto Protocol and how we were able as a government to do it, as many have done it for years and years, through a direct action plan. We'll continue to propose what can be done to reduce carbon emissions through a direct action plan, and without an impact on jobs and businesses across the nation, and particularly across my own electorate of Maranoa.
Good. Thank you very much for your contribution.